So today isn't mandatory. So if your camera is all wonky and not wanting to work, then we're good. No big deal. It's everything is good today. But yeah, like Melissa said, we are here to answer questions from you. We got a few questions from what Melissa had sent, and Heather and I have talked through them. So we are going to just go and talk about those questions. So Heather, do you want to start us?
Sure. I'll start with the first question. So we had a question submitted talking about if an entire class needs specific school supplies, how do you reflect that you helped an entire class on IC? So let's say, for example, you gave all third graders markers and you provided that school supply for the entire class. What I would do is create a group program and then go use the ad hoc filter and you would choose third grade. So that is how I would, you can do it that way, which is a time saver. Or if you wanted to enter an individual intervention for each child in third grade, you could do that. So it would show either way, but you could definitely do an ad hoc for that question. And then the second question is, how do I add groups events in IC? So we went over that in the new coordinator training where you create a group program, and that's how you enter the events. And you can either choose school wide or you can create your ad hocs. But if you're still having trouble with that, reach out to Russell or I, and we can do a Zoom call with you. We can walk you through it again on how to create that group program and connect students. But we also have videos on the FRYSC Training Hub. They're just a couple minutes long that explain to you exactly how to create a group program. And then if you don't like watching videos, we do have a typed up word for word version on how to do it, step-by-step directions. So like I said before, we have already gone through on actually how to create it. If you were not able to attend those sessions, they've been recorded, but Russell and I would be happy to, yes, thank you, Melissa. If you want to show them where the videos are, that would be great.
That's all Russell. He beat me to it.
That's me.
Oh, I see. Justin put a great comment in the chat. In Infinite Campus, you can do group programs by grade, but not by specific classroom. Is that correct? Yes, that's correct, Justin. So if it's just one classroom but not the entire grade, you would then have to, you could again either create the program and create a ad hoc with just those students in that class and then connect it, or you would do the individual intervention per student. So yes, same answer.
So now what I would suggest is before you build that ad hoc, I would check with my school secretary. I would check with my guidance counselor, because there's a very good likelihood that those ad hocs per class are already built.
Great. Yes, Russell, thank you for that reminder.
I feel like I can make this smaller.
Okay. So I do want to point out on the training hub, as Heather was talking, if you go to orientation info, if you go all the way down to where it says Infinite Campus Training, you can go in and you can find the things that Heather was talking about there. The videos, there are the step-by-step directions. All of that stuff is accessible through the training hub. So if you have questions, that would be my first go-to place to go and pick off that information, and it gives it to you in multiple directions, not hidden learning styles. So again, if you go there and you look at that and you don't, and it's not clicking and it's not just working, and you need to hands-on do it, feel free to contact me, feel free to contact Heather. We do not care at all to jump on a Zoom call with you, and you can share your screen and we can point you exactly in the direction to go.
I love the written directions, because if you're like me, I like to read it, check it off. I did this step. But like Russell said, it's different learning styles. Some people want to watch a video. So, but we're happy to walk you through it on, a Zoom call. Russell, we had another question in the chat.
Okay.
If your IC closes on July 1st, but you have held camps and activities. Can you enter those summer events as being held on the first day of school, but write an explanation in the FRYSC tab?
Yes. That is the recommended way to do it. Is if you, so let's say you don't have access to your Infinite Campus, because that's what you're going to find that more. You're going to find that a lot is if you do something in July, you may not have access to your students until the first day of school. So what you would do is then you could just put all your stuff in and just call it the first day of school. And then in the notes, tell exactly like when the actual event occurred.
And
then
Russell, are they able to choose, they choose the time frame? Are they able to choose summer break, but put the first day of school and it'll still
yeah,
collect the data?
It'll still work. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
Great question. Yep. And then our next question is it possible to run a report to show the number of families in a school?
You can, but it gets complicated. So there's always a question of, and I believe this is the next question as well, when it talks about grandparents, like finding how many grandparents are raising grandkids in a school. Remember what we said during the training, the information is only as good as what has been put in. Okay. There are ways to do that. And it is something in Infinite Campus, when you go in and set up an ad hoc, it is the other option. It's the query wizard. Okay, you can choose that option. But I'm going to be completely honest with you. It is very difficult to use. It's not something that's it's not something that's super simple. It's something that's a lot more complicated. And how many people like using Microsoft Excel or Google Sheets? Do you like playing with the formulas and all those kind of things that's in Excel? If you're good, if you like that, you may have a shot at getting into the query wizard and playing with it, because it becomes a lot of this data equals this, or is greater than this, or is less than this, or is the same as, or contains, or has all these different functions that you're going to have. So in the case of the question of grandparents, can I go in and find out how many kids are being raised by grandparents? You can, but you have to type it exactly the same. So if you go in and just type the word grandparent and it's not, you may get 0 results, because it may be listed as grandmother, grandfather. It could be listed as something different. If you go into it and you say grandmother and you do it in a capital letter and then the rest of it is lowercase, and the person that put in your information did everything in all caps, it still won't give you the information. It's very, very picky when you get into that query wizard. So I have two things to kind of say. If you want more information about the query wizard and doing all the deep dive stuff with that, number one, if you go to the top of Infinite Campus, you can go to the help button, and there's a thing called the campus community. It's something you have to sign up for, but it's free. It's part of Infinite Campus. But you do have to sign up for it. And when you sign up for that campus community, you have access to every video ever created by Infinite Campus. And you can literally go in and type into the help exactly what you want to find, and it will give you a video of all of that information. Okay, so that all that query wizard stuff, all of those things are there in videos directly produced from Infinite Campus. The second, if you're wanting like some more advanced things for everybody that is going to Fall Institute, I would recommend that you go to John's session at Fall Institute, because John and another one of his cohorts from Jefferson County are doing an Infinite Campus, an advanced Infinite Campus class at Fall Institute. So, I would recommend going to see John.
And I just want to add, as a coordinator, I did not use the query wizard. I think Russell used it a time or two. I might have played around with it a little bit. And I did go to an Infinite Campus training where they talked about Query Wizard and showed us how to do the formulas and all that. But it was a little bit, for me, it was a little bit overwhelming. And I never really had a need to use the Query Wizard. What I would do is if, say, for example, I wanted class rosters, I would run to the secretary and say, do you mind to print me class rosters? And she always was fine with giving me a copy. She would even give us class rosters because, you know, those change on a daily basis. Or if I said, ask my secretary, could you give me the name and address and parent contact for all the third graders? She could run that report for me because those secretaries are in Infinite Campus day in and day out, and they're running all these different reports all the time. And, you know, most of the time they don't mind to quickly run that report for you. But I really only had to ask her for certain reports a couple times a year. It wasn't, you know, I wasn't asking her all the time for reports. So our main thing that we use as coordinators is the selection editor, and of course the individual interventions, group programs, state reports, all those type of things. But you can use it. It can be done if you are more excelled in Microsoft Excel. Okay, the next question. So Russell really hit on the one about, is there a report that shows students that are in the care of someone else besides their biological parent? So Russell answered that. Here's a good question, Russell. In the parent guardian contacted box, does that get checked only if you contact them or just for any contact at all?
Only if you contact the parent. So like if you're just having contact with the student, then you would just check student. If you're never actually contacting the parent, then you would never check it.
Or if the parent came in for a meeting, person meeting with you, you would check that box because you had some contact with the parent. And then I see some FRYSC reports about number of phone calls made per month. Is that pulled from a report or do they just keep a log? That report's coming from where you put in that you made a phone call. So that section is coming out from what you entered. So if you had made 20 calls in Q1, it's because you entered that data. It's pulled from the report. It shows that the center had 20 phone calls in Q1.
Yeah, the state report will show you a number of phone calls as long as you check it. Okay, some just came in the chat. What if parents call you? Do you count contact parent? Yes. Anytime you talk to a parent, it's a parent contact. Whether they call you or you call them, it's still going to be a parent contact.
Good questions.
Mm-hmm. Okay, but where do the calls go in at? Through the contact box. Yeah. So at the top where you're that mode of intervention, like how you do that on an individual intervention, whether it's in school grounds or, you know, home visit, there's a place that says phone call. So you would just check phone call and then you would just go into the bottom into the intervention and just say what the phone call was about.
That's the mode of intervention.
Yeah.
And if you did a phone call with them, did a home visit with them, or maybe you did a phone call and they came into the office for a meeting in person, you would check all of them. So if you do more than one mode of intervention, you can check more than one mode of intervention.
Yep.
Is there anyone on here who has had to reach out to their secretary for a report? A lot of other reports, maybe that ask from the secretary when you need maybe the all A honor roll students, if you're doing some type of recognition, things like that too. Okay, another question.
Hey, I got it. Are the other school staff in your school able to see the data you're placing in the FRYSC tab? No. Well, it's need to know. It's informational need to know. And generally for our information, the only people in your school or in your building that are going to have access to it are going to be, of course, your principal sometimes will have access. Usually your attendance clerk will have access, and then your district contact will have access. Beyond that, Sometimes the guidance counselor may have access, but generally a teacher does not have access. They generally don't have that. You
Can you
do
explain the
kind of
difference?
double. So the difference between the FRYSC tab and the POP tab or the flags tab or any of those other things are those other tabs everybody can see. Those other tabs, everybody is able to see them. And yeah, it does feel like you are entering the information twice. And because you are. And there's no way around that. Infinite Campus, you can't enter it in one place and it just automatically populates somewhere else. That would be great, but it just doesn't work that way.
I would keep what you put in the POP tab more simplistic.
Brief.
Don't put as much detail. You know, this parent phone call, and maybe not put what it's about. Put it in your FRYSC intervention where people cannot see that confidential information.
So, okay, what is POP? I honestly do not know what that stands for. I just know that it is a tab.
It's different for every district because ours was called contact log.
Yeah, it's either PLP, contact log. I've seen a DPP tab, the flags tab. There's all kinds of other places that districts just say, hey, put all your parent contacts in this place. And PLP is just one of those places.
And the PLP can help you to see maybe what, has the teacher called, has the guidance counselor called. It is going to help you as a coordinator being able to see what other contacts have been made throughout the school and vice versa for them to see, oh, FRYSC has had contact, but not just, putting in your detail goes in your FRYSC tab.
So, and yes, it's okay if you don't have that. It's fine if you don't have it. Honestly,
you don't have to enter twice.
Yeah, from the state level, the only thing we're going to see is the FRYSC tab. That's it. Because I know when I was a coordinator, I had another coordinator in my district that she didn't realize that the division didn't see the other tabs, so she never put a home visit in the FRYSC tab. She always put it in the other tab because that's where the DPP wanted it. So she always just put it over there and never put it in ours. So it showed up that she never did any home visits, which wasn't the case. So, just make sure that when you're putting stuff in to get credit for us, make sure that you put it in, make sure that you're putting it in that, in the FRYSC tab. Now we do have another question from Region 4.
Yeah, Russ, I'm looking at that question. Hi, everyone. Sorry I came to the meeting late. I'm John Gribbins. No, the numbers should be reflective of both the reports. So I'm not sure why there must be a glitch somewhere, but the numbers should hold true on both reports. It's pulling from the same information. So if I have specific examples of what's going on in Region 4, and I can see example of the center and then the state report is not matching up, then we can kind of go from there.
Well, you'd have to put in an end date, correct, John? I mean, if they're not putting in an end date, then it's not going to run. It will not show that intervention. So you need to put an end date for sure.
Yeah, that's probably your problem. If you're just putting, because on an individual intervention, it's not required that you put an end date. Like that's not read and it'll take it without one. But if you don't put the end date, it will not pull the data.
And you can either can't you put that same day? Like if you did this intervention on September 21st, that's your start date and your end date, it'll still run on the report. Or if you're doing like your weekend backpack program, the start date for the beginning of the year till the end of the school year, but you must have an end date for it to show on the report. Great questions, you all.
Okay, so the question that came up, if we post program information to our school story in Class Dojo, can we count this as a program? No, because that's really just disseminating information. It's not really a program. It's no different than doing a one call or doing, sending out an email. It is just giving out information, and just giving out information is like part of the job. I mean, it's not really another thing. It's not an intervention of any kind. It's just simply passing along information.
Same for newsletters. If you do a center newsletter and you send that out, we don't count that in Infinite Campus. It's just a mode of communication. It's not an intervention per se.
That is a good question.
Mm-hmm.
That is a good question.
And we get that question a lot. So great question. And feel free to come off mute and ask questions too, if you want. Or if you have a certain situation and you're not sure how to log it in IC, you're more than welcome to, share that with us.
Okay, I have entered. Okay, so if a parent calls in and asks for, clothing, a food box, whatnot, I usually go ahead and enter it in IC that we made that contact right then, so I don't forget. And then maybe 2 or 3 days later, they come and pick up the box or the item of clothing or whatnot. So then I enter it that they actually picked it up. Does that cause a duplicate by chance or no?
Yes, because the intervention is the clothing. So the intervention wasn't necessarily a phone call. The intervention was the clothing, the reason for the phone call, which was the clothing, the food. So really, that's one intervention. Now you could put, obviously food is one intervention and clothing is different intervention, but you put them on the same screen, same time. But yeah, that was all part of a single intervention: the phone call, the follow up, the pickup. Yeah,
But that's okay, John, right? To enter information on the day of the phone call and then enter the day of the pickup. That's okay, correct?
No, because it's going to show up as a double intervention.
Right.
Okay, so don't do that.
Thing.
Yeah.
The best thing to do is, if you're going to put that phone call in, go back and open up the window and you can see all the interventions that you've already done, and click on that one. And then you can put into the notes, food box picked up on whatever date, and save it. And it's still, then you're going to have your information, but it's just going to count it once.
Okay.
No, because you're going to see. So here's what's going to happen. All you people, everybody that's new, which I think is the majority of you, what you're getting ready to run into is you're getting ready to run into the holiday season. You're getting ready to run into all of that. And what's going to happen is you're going to have people calling, and they're going to call in and ask for stuff. You're going to send out, applications. You're going to refer them to somebody else. Then they're actually going to pick up the gift. So what was the referral? What was the intervention? The intervention was them actually getting the gift. So it's not like 4 or 5 different interventions. It's just one intervention. So you just got to make sure that we're counting it just one time and not 5. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yes. Thank you for clarifying that. So learn something new every day. So good question, Tracy. Another question. So like an ongoing attempt to find housing over several weeks by several methods would be counted as one.
Yes, because the intervention is you're helping that family find housing. That's the intervention.
Okay. And so, because John, you really taught us a lot too about interventions. We're focusing on the intervention, correct? For students and group programming.
Right. So in excuse me, an individual intervention is usually reactive. Usually something comes up like a phone call, or a teacher says, hey, can you check on this kid? So you're usually reacting to a problem or situation or a need. And however that plays out, whether it's over the course of one phone calls or several weeks, it's that specific needs you're kind of responding to. A group program is more of something you're setting up to do. You're going to do a Red Ribbon Week activity. You're going to something you kind of put on your calendar and you plan ahead for. That's usually a group program. Now, a group program be one person only shows up, or it could be 5,000 people. But the point is, it's a program that you pre-plan for and set up, as opposed to individual intervention that you're responding to a need that kind of comes across your desk. That helps.
Thank you. I love the next question, Jody. Can you give some examples of how you schedule the time to enter your interventions into IC? I know coordinators struggle with finding the time to enter the data. Yes, we completely understand that coordinators struggle with this. So according to the admin guidebook, you should be entering at least monthly. But as a coordinator, I set off, this is just what I did. Every Friday afternoon from 1 to 2 or 2 to 3, it was an hour in the afternoon. That's when I focused on my Infinite Campus. You know, Friday, everybody was ready to get out of the building for the weekend. It kind of started quieting down. So I scheduled and put it on my calendar, Infinite Campus data every Friday afternoon. Now, others, it may work every Monday morning, but we have a lot of coordinators that they do it at the very end of the day before they leave. So it's definitely going to be a work style situation that works for you. But our recommendation, best practice would be to get that data in every 2 weeks, because if not, it really will become cumbersome and it will be hard to get all the data in. So just schedule a time. You know, it's okay to close your door sometimes and work on something, you know, for an hour or two. That's my suggestion. I don't know, John or Russell, if you have any others.
Sometimes what I do is my wife, I take it home. My wife makes me watch a Hallmark movie, and I hate Hallmark movies, so I'm putting it in home while I'm pretending to watch a Hallmark movie. I don't advocate that, not so much doing it at home, but just not watching a Hallmark movie. But yeah, I mean, everybody kind of does a little bit differently. You just have to find what works for you. I mean, I know from our region, we do have a lot of folks who that's like the only quiet time they can do. They just take it home, they do it over the weekend, which we don't advocate that, but that's sometimes the only time you can find a quiet time to do it. But you just gotta carve out some time. It's hard.
Just don't let it get, don't let yourself get too far behind, because then you'll get overwhelmed.
Yeah. And do you know, when we design interventions, even though it's kind of paperwork cumbersome, we really specifically count how many clicks it would take to put an intervention in, and we kind of design to take the minimum number of clicks to click, hit enter. So we really did take that to heart to make it as streamlined as possible to do that. So and sometimes if you have a stack, and once you get in a row, you can kind of move them very quickly sometimes.
And there are coordinators that have assistants, and so if you have an assistant, you're lucky, because assistants do a lot of Infinite Campus data, which is nice.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, it's going to be what fits you, what fits your schedule, what fits. But honestly, if you could do it weekly, it's better for you, because it's less you have to do at one time. If you let it pile up, I know we recommend at least a month, that you have to put it in monthly, but if you let it pile up for a month, it's going to take a while. I mean, it just is. It's just going to take time to get it put in. The less time you have between entering, the quicker it's going to be.
Mm-hmm. And I do suggest grabbing a Dr. Pepper and popcorn, turning on a little bit of music on that Friday afternoon while you're focusing on your IC data. It just, makes it more enjoyable.
Just not a Hallmark movie.
All right.
And while we have a short break here in between the questions, John joined us a little bit late after the introduction, so I just wanted to thank him for being here with us. John is the Youth Service Center Coordinator at No Middle School in Jefferson County, and has been involved in the actual development of the FRYSC tab and Infinite Campus. So he comes to us with all the knowledge and all the experience, and I just can't say enough how much we appreciate his willingness to help us with this. So thanks, John. And you guys who are here on this call have the real expert with you.
Yes, John is the
There's no question.
expert. He wrote the program.
I also get all the blame too, so it's okay.
Does anyone have any questions about the options that you're able to choose for your interventions? We do on our website have a definition document. So if you're ever unsure, what should I choose for this intervention? Because you all know, or if you don't know, the more you get into FRYSC, you will be asked to do some very bizarre things at times. And it may just not fit under a certain category in Infinite Campus. So we do have a definitions document on our website. And then whenever you are entering that data, it's your best judgment. So you could pick other health or other mental health. If it's something that is not there for you, just use your best judgment when choosing the type of intervention, which category. Because I feel like Russell and I, we get a lot of questions about that from coordinators. Like, I did this service, where would this fit?
And I just put a link to that document in the chat.
Thank
So
you,
if you
Russell.
want that document, it is in the chat. Okay, is there a way to update our community partners in the intervention screen, or we just have to wait for admin to get time? Unfortunately, you just have to wait for admin to get time because you do not have rights to change that stuff. If your district wants to give you rights, that'd be great, but they're not. But the district can put it in pretty quick. What I would recommend, though, if you're looking at that, I would recommend to keep it fairly generic, instead of like specific, community people, because like I specifically think of churches because we work with churches so often. Generally when I would put anything in, we would just say local churches as opposed to each individual church that would work with you, because that would become a lot. That would become a lot. All right. More questions.
There's a question about school age, our children who are not school age yet. And that is one flaw in the system, is that it's based on students who are enrolled in your school district. And so those are not in school yet. You can't do that. But I know the FRYSC counts has a way of doing that to count those numbers there. It won't show up on your FRYSC reports, but there's a secondary report designed specifically for that.
Yeah, that is the unenrolled section on FRYSC counts. And when we start doing, when you go to NCO and we go through the record keeping session, Tanya will be there and will show you where that is and show you what to do with that. Because that is, as John said, that is the drawback to Infinite Campus. The kid has to be tied to a school, and you can't tie them to a school if they're not actually enrolled in the school. So you will never be able to capture that information in Infinite Campus.
And that's why the unenrolled section was added to FRYSC counts, because even youth service centers sometimes are serving kids that have graduated. They're not in school anymore. So we wanted coordinators to be able to enter that information so we could capture that data. And that was coordinators' request. So the division worked on getting that added for children, not in preschool and graduated students. And there's another question, Russell. If I have a recurring program each week, should I enter the program each week or pick the beginning date and future end date?
I'm going to tell you to do it weekly, because if you do, and I say this every time, and it's the food bags. If you're talking about weekend food bags, yes, you may know that you're going to give them out 30 times. And yes, if you put that information in Infinite Campus and you put it in there that you're going to meet 30 times, it's going to give you information, but it's not going to be completely accurate, because Infinite Campus does not know that you're doing it every Friday. It doesn't know that.
Yeah.
And we want the data to be verifiable.
But Russell, what you can do, if you put down, if you do it 30 times, that's the number of meetings you have. So you can count that as the number of meetings, and that would tabulate it times 30. The catch is, it's not always the same kids every 30 times. You might
exactly
kids, but so that's going to throw it off a little bit. If you were to have a specific group where it was the same kids every time, and they got, you might have one or two, but you could do it beginning and ending. Now, some people like to do it weekly also, because when you run the reports, it shows it multiple times. And so it shows that, that was like multiple times of work, whereas one time it looks like it was a one-time thing, even though you put in 30 meetings, tabulate times 30. It just looks more, it looks like a lot more work when you kind of put it in weekly. And what some folks would do, they would say like Backpack Express, and they would list as part of the title, you list the week, or week 2 or week 3. So you can use the same title, but differentiate the different weeks if you do that. So it shows that way.
Yeah. Because there could be a week that, you have the kid may not be there. The kid may just not be there that week and they just don't get their bag, and Infinite Campus won't count them if they're not there. So, you know, you can look at it like that. That's why I always suggest do those weekly. Just do it whenever. And honestly, once you get in the habit of doing these and you've created the ad hoc group, it only takes a minute to create the group program. It does not take a long time. And then you can just click it and run it. You can be done in a couple of minutes.
Okay, so I have an ad hoc report for the brown bags, and we've listed all the students. So you're saying every Friday to go in once we see which kiddos actually pick up? No?
You'll create
Nope.
the ad hoc in advance of everyone on the program, and all you have to do is go in there. You've already created your group program. You've created your ad hoc. So all you have to do is go in there and run it. And if there's a child that's absent, IC will connect it and will not count that student. So like Russell said, you just go in, it takes 2 minutes, just run it on Friday, every Friday.
Run the ad hoc report on Friday?
Yeah, the only thing you would have to create is you create a new group program every week. You don't have to recreate the ad hoc every week.
Okay, so a new
Just
group
create
program
the
every Friday. Okay, I got you.
Yeah, that's all you do. That's all you have to.
But you use the same ad hoc filter each time.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good questions.
Yes. Is anyone starting to feel more comfortable with Infinite Campus as you're starting to use it more? Is it getting better?
Maybe.
I think so. And then I found out, maybe like the duplicates. I felt like I needed to I thought, but when I ran the report, I could see duplicates. So that's why I was like, maybe I am making duplicates when somebody contacted me for a food box but didn't pick it up till days later. So at least I found that out. And then, so I feel like I've got the fundamentals of it, but there's some specifics about that are just going to have to learn as you go kind of things, I guess.
So, and honestly, what's going to teach you is really just getting in there and doing it.
Yeah.
And that's really how you're going to learn is just to actually play with the system and look at things.
Yeah, when I ran the report for my AC meet or advisory council meeting, that's where I started seeing duplicates, and I didn't understand what those were for.
Now,
and
there are going to be times though that you are going to have duplicates, even if you don't even if it's not the other way, because let's say a kid came in today and you gave them a shirt, and next week they came in and you gave them a food box, and next week they came in and you gave them, I don't know, some pencils or something. Those are actually in different interventions that they're asking for. So they are going to show up as duplicates. So that is still going to happen. It's not that you're never going to have a duplicate student, because when you start thinking about the expanse of a full year,
yeah,
there could be multiple times that you deal with a kid, throughout the year.
Yeah,
So.
and that's on the report, the duplicate and the unduplicate counts, that throws people off a lot. And so just like as Russell explained, so the duplicate is how many times you served, how many interventions you've given out. Whether it was Johnny, you gave out 3 pencils, that's 3 interventions. The unduplicate is how many different students you served or families. So Johnny would have gotten 3 for duplicates, 3 pencils, but he'd only got 1 time for unduplicated because he's only 1 student. So that's the difference between the two. So it's how many different students you served versus how many interventions you provided.
For each kid. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, that helps.
Yes.
Has anyone, sorry, Melissa Newton has her hand up.
Yeah, we've got a couple of questions that got submitted through the reflection form for the video on the website, and there are a couple on here I wanted to see if we could get answered. So if Feeding America bags are assembled off-site, how do I know how many volunteer hours to log?
You just have to ask them.
Good question.
I mean, that's the only way you'll ever know, is you just have to say, hey, how many people actually were there doing this?
And how long is it taking?
How long is it taking? That's That's really the only way you can do it. Unless,
Right.
because if you don't, you're just having a guess.
Yeah.
And we have another one here. For orientation, we gave out school supplies for all the students that came. Would this go in IC as a group intervention or individual intervention for each student?
If it
I
was
would-
at open house, I would say I'd be okay with a group. If you
Yeah.
were designing it to do it that way, I'd say a group.
Yeah.
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, because again, the open house was a planned activity. You all put it on the
Mhm.
calendar. You
Mhm.
had planned activity, and you purposely were ready to hand out those backpacks. So you set up a program to do that. So that was a program.
Yep.
And one more here that I think is kind of important is, let's see, where did it go? Is there anything that we should not enter into Infinite Campus?
Your opinion.
There you go. I
I
was
mean,
thinking, I can't think of anything,
that's
but
the only
yes,
thing that you don't
your
that
opinion.
you don't enter is like something that's your opinion. Other than that, no, I mean, there's nothing that you do that you can't really enter. I mean, now you don't really, well, I take that back. Things like talking to a community partner, you're not going to enter that. Talking to a teacher, you're not going to enter that because it's got to be tied to students. So those type of things, when you're talking to adults that don't have kids in the building, or it's not about a student in the building, then you're not going to.
Mhm.
Then you're going to just do. You wouldn't record those and everything.
Yeah.
But anything to do with a student, put it in.
Yeah. And yeah, don't think of Infinite Campus as tracking everything you do. Think of it as the interventions provided, whether through individual or group programs. What are the interventions that your school, as your center, is providing to your school and community? So it's not tracking everything you do throughout the week. You're going to do a lot more throughout the week through meetings and different things that aren't necessarily interventions that you're providing.
We have another question. If we have volunteers for an event and they all work the same hours, is the total hours everyone's added up together or just the total of the event? You would want to add them all up together. So if you had 2 volunteers for a 4-hour event, that's a total of 8 volunteer hours. Good question. And that's going to be very, very helpful for you all this time next year, whenever you have to enter your in-kind information on your FRYSC Count Center page, because you'll be able to go and look at your Infinite Campus report and see how many volunteers hours you had for in-kind. You'll be able to multiply that by the volunteer total. It's somewhere around $28, $29. You'll be able to multiply that and have your number. That's going to help you with your in-kind. So if you stay on top of that, it'll really make your job easier this time next year.
And one more volunteer question. If there are 21st Century and Gear Up staff that help with a program, would they be considered as volunteer time?
I'm not the Gear Up. I don't have a Gear Up. I know centers do, so I'm not familiar with the Gear Up and
Is
how they're
that the
doing
Gear
that
funding?
whatsoever.
Now, Gear Up, it's
Okay, so I'm not sure
another
about that.
program that gets funded in the schools. And in my opinion, coming from volunteer management, if it's a part of their paid position to assist with those, then they're not volunteers. But if outside of their regular duties at the school, then they would be volunteers. So it's really a matter of paid and unpaid and what they get paid to do. So.
Yeah, and I think Gear Up's
Good
coming
point.
through a similar funding source, correct, Melissa? So we don't want to look like we're double dipping that funding source or double counting numbers for that funding source.
I'm pretty sure that I think that Gear Up is a federal grant, if I'm not mistaken. So
Also, too, let's say you don't have a lot of volunteers in your building. No matter what, every center should have volunteer time because of your advisory council. So when your community partners are coming, your parents are coming to those meetings, they're volunteering to come and be a part of the council. So you should automatically have volunteer time for 5 meetings a year from those folks. A good point, Melissa.
I was getting ready to hop off, and then I heard something that I thought I might ask a question for. So with the advisory council, if we're counting that time for volunteers for, obviously not the teachers if it's happening during their workday, but for parents and community members, if they're not I mean, the parents, you can tie that volunteer time to a kid. But you're not talking about Infinite Campus, you're talking about the in-kind.
Yes, I was just talking about in-kind. That's where you'd want to keep that on your in-kind documentation. Because I don't think you can put that in Infinite Campus and advisory council meeting and a parent coming. I would keep that on my in-kind documentation.
Okay.
There's only one time when you can enter advisory council. There's one situation that you can enter advisory council into Infinite Campus.
Okay.
If you're a YSC and you have a career and you have your career component, the students that attend your advisory council meeting, that can actually be considered. It could be considered mentoring in some capacity, depending on how you write it in your CPP, because they are attending a professional meeting.
Yes,
okay, is this stuff
great.
that we'll learn at because like CPP, I see a book over here labeled CPP. I don't know what that is yet.
Yes,
so
you're gonna find all about that next week. You're gonna know.
Okay.
You're gonna have more information about that than you're gonna want to know next week.
Okay, gotcha.
NCO. Yes, absolutely.
All the light bulbs will go off. All the light bulbs.
Okay. All right. Thanks for your time, guys.
And then y'all are gonna start throwing stuff at us like this is too much. And you're gonna just start throwing things.
So they asked in the chat, do we enter advisory council meetings as a program? No. But great suggestion, Russell, if you have the students, putting that as an intervention with those students or making a group program for the career exploration. I love that. Is there anybody on here using Infinite Campus for something else? What else have you been using it for? Have you been looking up students in classrooms? Have you been using it to find the address for a home visit? You know, are you getting into that structure of being able to use it and look up what you need? Okay, good.
All right. Well, do we have any other questions?
I have another one here for you guys. How often do you need to run your reports?
That's going to vary depending on what you want to do with them. Heather and I are actually going to focus a little bit on that on our session at Fall Institute. We're going to talk about that a little bit there. But it depends on what you want to do with it. A lot of people will use that information because if you just run the state report, you can use that data because it's just numbers. You can use that data for everything. You can give it to your advisory council. You can give it to your SBDM. You can give it there. A lot of people like to run it at the end of every month. But at minimum, we ask you to run it at the end of every year. I mean, at minimum. So it just really depends on what you want. Especially like that, the individual intervention roster report that you could run whenever you feel the need for it.
But that's more of a confidential report because it's going to have actual student names on it.
Yep.
And one thing John worked on, which this is really great, when you run your state and group report, you're going to see a lot of dashes. Like maybe you're an FRC and not a YSC, and maybe you haven't done anything this year with substance abuse. You're going to see dashes. It's okay that there's dashes because you're not ever going to fill every single category. It used to show zeros, but John and his team got it changed over to dashes, which made coordinators feel a lot better because you're not ever going to have a number in every single category because it's for every center statewide. So don't feel bad if you run a report and you see a bunch of dashes. That's okay.
Yep.
Okay, we've got about 8 minutes left here in our session today. So I've got another question from the reflection form. Does Infinite Campus allow me to send mass messages to parents? And if so, how do I do that?
Heather, this is all you.
Yes, you can do that through Building Messenger. And the step-by-step instructions are with the other instructions that Russell showed earlier on the FRYSC Training Hub. It's through Building Messenger. It's very easy. The only suggestion I like to give coordinators, especially in my region, is check with your admin, check with your principal before you do that. Some principals are fine with coordinators sending out mass messages. Some principals want to be the one that does that, and they want you to send it to them. So it all depends on, you know, your school climate, what your principal will allow or not allow. But Building Messenger is great even to send, let's say, to your backpack program students. You know, if you wanted to send a message just to those families because you've created that ad hoc, you can send just them a message through text or email and letting them know, you know, the bags aren't able to come home today. They're going to be coming home on Monday. So that would be through the Building Messenger icon, or it's called different across the state. I think mine was Building Messenger. Others was Message Sender. So it's different for all centers, but the directions are on the FRYSC Training Hub. Very easy to do, step by step. Thanks, Melissa.
And then I've got one last one from the reflection form that I will ask. Will it ever be easy?
Talking about the job, or did I see? Or are you talking about Infinite
Yeah,
Campus?
the job or
Infinite
Infinite Campus. It will get easier, I promise. It gets easier. In a couple years, you're just gonna be flying through it. Kelly said no. 1 year made a huge difference. Yes. When you're in year, I would say by the time you're in year 3 and 4, you're going to start feeling so much better. Things will get easier. I promise you.
The hard piece always is going to be the time aspect. The mechanics are what the mechanics are. Once you learn the mechanics, it becomes simpler, but the longer you're a coordinator, it seems like the less and less time you end up having. So it's going to be finding that balance. And that's why now, as a new coordinator, that's why it's so important that you go ahead and figure out what that routine is and go ahead and get into the habit of doing that. That way, as things do get busier and more is asked of you, then you've already got that routine. You've already got that pattern down where you need it to go.
And don't be too hard on yourself. You know, there's all your, as far as when I was a coordinator, did not have a list. That list is going to be there tomorrow. There's going to be another list the next day. You know, you're never going to get it all done in one day. So just don't be too hard on yourself. Prioritize and you'll be just fine. Oh, it was from Carrie. I was going to say, Carrie looks familiar. I've seen her before. Yeah. She's been around for 12 years. It does get easier, but it's always quite the ride. Just learn to ride the waves. Oh, great advice, Carrie. Thank you. Oh, yes. You can't quit for at least 3 years. That's how long it takes to learn it enough to decide. There you go. Give yourself at least 3 years, but stick around, please.
And I've always said, as much as we push doing paperwork and getting information in and collecting data, first and foremost, serving the family is the most important thing. And you serve the family first and foremost, and you worry about the paperwork later.
Great advice, John. And as a coordinator, don't feel bad about delegating. You know, you have a lot of people in your building that love this program, your custodians, your cafeteria folks, teachers, they love this program. So once you start building those relationships, those people are going to be there to help you when you need help. You know, you can ask them, you know, do you mind to help set up tables? Do you mind to help make the cookies for this event? Just all kinds of things. People will be willing to help you get everything done that you need to. It'll come.
Real quick, that's something I was going to say. Don't be afraid to delegate. Don't be afraid to ask questions, and don't be afraid to ask for help. You know, you got a lot of people here willing to help with a lot of different experience and different avenues. So don't feel like you're at it alone. There's a lot of people willing to help. So just kind of.
Okay, well, we are in our last couple of minutes for our session. So I'm going to be quiet for 30 seconds and see if there are other questions.
Silence are always nice.
As a training person, I tell you that being quiet was a hard skill to learn. But it's an important one to stop for a second and take a breath and let folks think for a minute. But we are almost to the end of our time today. But those of you who are brand new, we'll be together next week, and there'll be a lot more opportunities to ask questions if you think of something, after we end this Zoom today. And if you're not going to be at new coordinator orientation next week and you think of questions, you can email us. Our emails are pretty easy. It's our first name dot our last name at ky.gov. So if you want to email me, melissa.newton@ky.gov, and everybody else's is like that as well. Feel free to reach out to us. If we don't know the answer, we'll find some. We'll email John. If we don't know the answer, we will find someone who does know the answer to your questions. We're here to support you and want to see you be successful in your positions. And so, like Quentin said, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We do appreciate you joining us this morning. We will make this recording available on the Training Hub once I get it edited and produced and all that processed and all those kind of fun things. So if there was a question that you want to hear the answer to, again, you can always go back to that Training Hub website and you'll be able to find that on the Infinite Campus page there. But if we don't have any other questions, we will go ahead and end. Oh, this is a Fall Institute question. I will not be able to come this year. However, will the sessions be available to view? Probably not. That was a question that we got for VOV as well. Are we going to record questions for the live conferences? And unfortunately, we just don't have the resources to be able to do that. Now, if there are handouts or PowerPoint presentations, we will gather those and try to make those available to everyone if there are materials that way. So appreciate that. Sorry, we're going to miss you at Fall Institute. Anything else? All right. Again, thank you all. We appreciate you. And for those new coordinators who are on here, we will see you next week here in Lexington.